Hey you guys, welcome back to Bright Violet Arts. My name is Valerie Morris and this video is about my new notebook setup for my mid-year bullet journal for 2023. I'm calling this theme Cosmic Garden. So it's got kind of an outer space sort of feel and a lot of the familiar botanicals that I most love to draw. But before I get into all that, I'm going to give you a quick flip through of my last little baby here. This was my 6-month notebook from January to June of this year. And here's a look back at the style that I set it up in. Unfortunately, I had a couple of things happen after my April setup, and I did not complete a May setup or a June setup. I started the May setup, but you see this thick block of pages here? I glued all of those pages together. They were all false starts for May. I never could pick a theme. But more than the theme issue was just an art block I think I was suffering from that took, a couple months to get over. I had some other issues in my personal life, and it was just complicated to be creative. But it's okay to take a break whenever we need to and to just start fresh again when we're ready. And that's what I've done. So I'm very excited about this new notebook. I'm excited for a fresh start in journaling, and with all new notebooks, I have this unreasonable optimism that these are going to be the spreads that finally help me get my life together, and this is going to be my time. This is my 6 months of magic in the Bujo world. So I always have the highest hopes for every new notebook. And I'm going to start this one off with a pencil sketch. I started out with this theme thinking it was going to be a wildflower theme. So my pencil sketch is, it starts off mainly with just a single wildflower here. And I looked at some photos of real wildflowers, and I just found one where I liked the structure, the body of the flower and the shape of the petals. And so I kind of looked at that when I was sketching out my flower design. But after that, I was kind of winging it. I didn't know exactly what I wanted for the theme. I knew I wanted a black background on the flowers, and as I was drawing it, it just kind of morphed into like a crescent moon up at the top. And I realized I wanted to do a space design. So I put in these little sparkles, these little 4-point sparkles that kind of look like, to me, stardust. So that's what that is all about. And then I came in with my paint markers to start coloring in the design and bringing everything to life. I'm using 3 types of markers for the coloring of all these designs. For this setup, I'm going to use 2 kinds of paint markers and then some regular water-based markers. So the paint markers I'm using are either going to be Posca pens that have a bullet tip, or I'm going to use these Caron Pigment Deco Brush markers that I'm using here on the purple flower. These have a brush tip, but they're still, the ink is really paint. And I like the Caron markers so much. I love the Poscas too, but I really like the Caron markers because they take a little bit longer to dry than the Posca paint does. So it's a little easier to blend those. They stay wet long enough that you can apply 2 colors of marker and then kind of blend them together with that brush tip. So those are really fun to color with if you enjoy creating art. I highly recommend them because they're just so satisfying. And of course, I will list the brands of markers in my description box if you are interested in learning more about them. This bit here with the blue marker is like a sprig of heather or some kind of heather type plant. What I really enjoyed about this theme is once I realized it was going to be set in outer space in terms of the background of all the flowers, that freed me up to do fictional plants. I didn't have to worry about is this plant, does it look realistic? Is this actually a plant we find in nature on Earth? I was able to just make up any kind of plant design that I wanted, and I can just say it's an alien plant because after all, this is a cosmic garden in outer space. So who knows what could be growing in there, right? For the title over here, I'm just going to put 2023 since this is a mid-year bullet journal. Now, initially, I had planned to make this journal run from June to December, which is 7 months, instead of starting in July for a typical 6-month journal. That plan fell through, so I'm really glad that where I have June through December written under 2023, I'm really glad I aborted that mission and decided to erase it. Because when I started plotting out my spreads on the later pages, I realized that a 6-month journal was much easier to construct because it's an even number. There's 6 months, so I can do 3 columns on each page for the future log, for example. It's a lot harder to fit 7 months into 3 pages and have the space balance. So I did decide to just make this a 6-month journal in the end. This quote here I love. It's from Neil deGrasse Tyson, and if you're not familiar with him, he is a very notable astrophysicist, and this is a quote that I found from him where he says we are not figuratively but literally stardust, which I just love. And he's talking about how the atoms and the minerals that compose human life or anything on Earth, they all were manufactured in the cores of stars, in deep space, and they've been shot across the universe to arrive on all the different stars and planets. So it's pretty heavy stuff, as a concept, but I love the idea that we are made of stars. So that was a great quote to start it off. Now, here I'm joining already in progress my painting for the future log on the next spread. And I'm using my fingertip to blend these 3 colors in these flower petals. And I think it looks so pretty. It does take some time to kind of do all the layers. But as you can see there, the result is really pretty and smooth. It looks like cotton candy to me. I love the way that paint pens look when they're blended. So I'm going to set this up again with the 6 columns for the 6 months that are going to be the life of this journal, and give them each little columns. I'm using a long, lean kind of font, like a tall, skinny font for this. It's pretty similar to my natural handwriting, just stretched out. And I kind of went with that because, one, I thought it looked cool and futuristic. Sort of futuristic. And I also just find it quick to do. And since I was putting so much effort into painting the illustrations, I didn't want to have a really tedious font to work through as well. And I'm just highlighting off some lines to help separate where I will write my upcoming dates, anything I'm going to write in this future log, like a certain task or maybe an appointment, anything that's coming up for a month that I don't yet have a calendar created for. Now what happens after I finish these columns is that I'm going to go back in and I am going to repaint some of that illustration. So one thing that I love, and also is kind of a trap with the paint pens, is that you can paint over anything pretty much as many times as you want. And that's great when you make a mistake, but what trapped me on this painting is I ended up spending 2 days on it because I kept painting over things. Even though they were probably fine, I could have left them. You can see that used to be a flower, and then I came back and decided to paint over it and do the future log title here. In the end, I liked the future log title better. It kind of reminded me of a Star Wars vibe to have the white letters in the black space. But yeah, that's how it looked when it was finished. I was really happy with it. For the 3rd spread of this setup, I'm going to do a large illustration on one page and then save the left side of the spread for the tables and trackers that I'm going to use to measure my fitness progress over 6 months. So for the illustration, I'm starting off here with some more abstract plants. And I wanted to start off with these little spiky plants in the background because I was really leaning into that alien plant concept that I mentioned before. Just a fictional plant, although it does kind of remind me of the spikes on an aloe vera plant, some kind of spiky succulent. But yeah, so for the foreground of the picture, I'm doing another flower, and I'm starting by the center of the flower. I wanted to paint that in first with Posca pens, and then I'm going to use a brush tip marker to do these little pressure strokes that make a nice petal shape. So a pressure stroke just means that I'm going to start with light pressure on the brush, and then in the center of the stroke I'll push down with more pressure, and then to end it I will lift up with lighter pressure. So the line is going to be narrow, thick, narrow, and that is the nice shape that I want to get for those petals. So that stroke is really good for any kind of daisy or coneflower, anything that has those long central petals. I'm going to add some dimension to these petals with a white brush tip paint marker, and I'm going to add that highlight just to one side of each petal. To add a shadow to the opposite side of the highlight, I'm going to use a darker pink marker. And at this point, I decided that even though I really liked the quote I had put in, the composition of the whole picture was just bugging me, and I ended up blacking everything in. I kind of regretted it later, but it all worked out in the end once I got the title on. But at this point, I was frustrated with the illustration, so I took a break and made the charts before I finished off the lettering. So one of these charts is for my weekly weight. I tend to weigh every Monday morning. I only do that one time a week, and I record it every time. The other chart is for my gym attendance. Anytime I go get a proper workout between July and December, this little table has a box for me to indicate with a little dot or an X or whatever. So that's my gym tracker. The other table, like I said, is for weekly weights, and then I have a box at the bottom that is just a place to write the total difference from the start to finish of the tracker for any change up or down in my weight and the total number of days I went to the gym. So after I finished off my lettering for fitness tracker, I'm adding in some more sparkles. And I love these little white sparkles that I did with the paint pen. The way I was able to make them a little more delicate was to paint them in with the white paint marker and then come back and thin them out with a stroke of the black just along the edges of the white line. And that made the twinkle look a little more delicate, I thought. So I enjoyed that technique. Okay, moving on. The next spread up is going to have a couple different concepts on it. On one side, I've got my daughter's school attendance tracker, and it is just to help me keep track of any day that she might be absent from school. I want to know what day it is and what the reason for the absence was. So I've made a chart here that has the 5 school days in the week, and then the Monday of each week, that starting Monday, I've listed the date for. So that's her absent calendar, and I will write like 1, 2, 3, whatever in the boxes on days that she might miss. And then in these highlighted lines, that's where I will write notes on what the reasons were for her if she is out of school. All right, so on the other side of the spread, this is my entertainment tracker, and I have created boxes here to list movies or TV series or music that I might want to check out. I'm adding some colorful highlighting to separate the lines with my zebra mild liner brush pens. And those are just the best highlighters. I love them. All of the highlighted lines, even the gray ones in this setup, are part of the zebra mild liner brush marker set. So there is the attendance and entertainment trackers all set. Next up is one of my most used trackers, or at least one of my most helpful trackers out of the last almost 4 years that I've been bullet journaling. This is my gift ideas list, and I keep a separate box here, a list for each of the main people in my life that I tend to shop for when gift giving occasions come around. So I have individual boxes that just have a first name on them for certain people that are going to have a longer list there. And then I have one box that I'm just going to call fam, and that's kind of my etc. box for anybody else that I might be thinking of gifting. And I'm adding cute little bullet points here for each box with a stencil. It's a little star stencil, and of course I loved the stars because they fit into my cosmic theme. On the opposite page, I've got space for 2 lists. One of them is a new one for me, a someday maybe list, which I've never had before, and then a box for new recipes that I might try over a 6-month period. Anything for my family, and that way I'll be able to make note if we liked it or not, and see if I want to make it again. The only space I had left in this spread for an illustration was a tall, thin rectangle, and I decided just to try to match that with the shape of a plant, so I thought of a vine. And then on the vine, again, thinking of alien plant ideas, I thought I would just put these little bubbles, and like, I don't know if this is like too gross or not, but I was thinking they were like maybe alien eggs. That's what they looked like to me. They looked very glowy with like the blended white paint on the edges, and it seemed very sci-fi. Okay, now it is time to do a final flip through and take a look back at the pages that I have started off this new notebook with. I'm pretty excited about it. I hope you enjoyed watching the process. If you want to see more of my journal or more of my illustration work, you can find me at Bright Violet Arts on Instagram. I hope you got some inspiration today for your own journal, and if you did, let me know in the comments. I love to find out about that. So thanks so much for hanging out with me today, and I will be back again soon with a new Plan With Me video for my July setup. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss that one, and I'll see you there.